Hey, I'm Sarah Smith, family doctor, clinical day advisor, and the chatting coach. Welcome back to Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast, where we're going to be interviewing peers or world experts who can help us think about our clinical day in a way that is more sustainable and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Hey, everybody. I want to introduce a conversation that I had recently with Dr. Siobhan Key and Jessie Mahoney, two physician coaches who I have worked with previously. And we had a conversation at the beginning of last year, and we had a conversation again at the beginning of this year. And it was around the things that are happening in our lives, our plans for this year, as we were thinking about the new year ahead. I wanted to bring it here because it gives you a little of the behind the scenes happening in my life and some ways to think about how to reframe or rethink or enjoy or look forward to some of the things happening in your lives as well. So enjoy this conversation, a little cross-pollination with Dr. Siobhan Key's podcast. Enjoy. Have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, two of my favorite people in the world, Dr. Jessie Mahoney and Dr. Sarah Smith. Can you guys go ahead and introduce yourself? Maybe Jessie, do you want to go first?
Sure. I am Jessie Mahoney, and I am a pediatrician and also a mindful coach and a yoga and mindfulness instructor. And I do a lot of coaching and retreats and have a podcast called the Mindful Healers Podcast and teach yoga if anybody wants to join me.
Nice. And Sarah?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Smith. I'm a rural family physician and do some emerg and hospitalist as well. Recently relocated back to Australia, where I'm originally from, but spent the last 12 years in Canada. I help physicians and clinicians in the area of their clinical day, helping them with practical strategies for efficiency or just improving or pivoting or overcoming challenges within the clinical day so we can get home with our work done, aiming towards sustainability within clinical medicine while we wait for the healthcare systems in the world to acknowledge us and get better for us. But in the meantime, we're helping in that area. I have a podcast, Sustainable Clinical Medicine, and it's so wonderful to be here.
Excellent. And so we are talking about New Year's and just kind of planning and thinking about 2025. And Jessie, before we start recording, you remind me, I think the last time we did one of these, it was the three of us. So it'll be interesting to see how things have evolved and changed, because I know everybody's life has changed a fair bit since that last one. But I'm curious, just maybe let's start with, what are you guys thinking about for the new year for yourself? And if there's specific things that you do as like a routine or a practice, feel free to share that as well. And maybe Sarah, do you want to go first?
So I don't tend to do New Year's resolutions. I don't. That's not one of the biggest things for my life, but I do like to reflect on maybe the things that have been interesting or new about the previous year, and then what I'm looking forward to or working towards about the coming year. And so that tends to be what I do around this time of the year. I look at what are the things that I'm looking forward to in terms of priorities for what I would like to make sure that I'm including in my life for the new year. And that can be a bit of reflection of the last year and then bringing the things that I'm prioritizing through to the new year. For me, this year is about family for sure, just making sure my adult children are maintaining relationships with them, doing memory making activities with them. Marriage, it's actually our 25th wedding anniversary coming up next week.
Us too.
Yeah, and rather
Not
than
next week, but this year.
rather than an anniversary day, we're just looking at what can we do this year to just increase that togetherness and relationship and learning about each other in this new era, I guess, of being together. And then in terms of the business, because of the relocation to Australia, I'm looking at a whole new country of physicians and clinicians who are also struggling in this area, in addition to looking after our members in the Northern Americas. And so the areas that I'm specifically looking at are what do we need to help us? So what are we, it's really hard to answer that question when you're in the busyness of your day about what do I need, and helping to find those answers for physicians or clinicians has been really a big focus, I guess, of what I've been doing recently and what I'm looking forward to doing in the new year.
Excellent. Jessie, what about you? What are you thinking about?
So what I'm thinking about today, and today is before the new year, I often do this yoga series at the end of the year called End Well and Begin Well. And so I'm in the middle of my thinking about ending well. And I think we often just move right on to like, oh, what am I going to do next year? And so when I do this, it's usually like a 4 or 5 days of yoga in a row, really thinking about what did I do well last year and what was I proud of, and really thinking about how I want to end the year before I think about how I want to move on. And so I actually am really enjoying the reflection of thinking about what was I proud of and what did I learn and what did I change. And for me, this was a really huge year in that I became an empty nester. I sent my last kid off to college and I moved after 20 years out of San Francisco to the country. And I'm now in the country in the middle of winter, which is a whole different experience than living in San Francisco. I'm learning all about nature. I mean, I knew all about nature, but I'm learning more about nature. I'm living nature. And so as I think about next year, I'm really in this more sort of soft, accepting space of I've made all these changes, so I'm kind of having to sink into them. And a big part of my move, it's funny because Sarah, you created this real delineation between business and personal, and I at the moment have zero delineation between business and personal, because where I live is is a retreat center, and so I'm kind of doing building that out, and people are actually coming here to do retreats and even doing institutional retreats. So, and I'm super proud. Today, I got a really big grant to do in-person retreats for a local healthcare organization, multiple over the course of the year, and the leadership workshop. And so all of these things were things that were kind of percolating that are coming to fruition. And as you were thinking about waiting for the healthcare to change, like I'm feeling very hopeful today that like they've gotten the message. It will still take a long time to change, but that it does feel like changes in the air, and when things work and are making a difference, they are willing even to pay for things. Like I've often thought they're willing to do them but not to pay for them, but now that's beginning to change, and it seems super exciting for me. So the other thoughts I have on the end of the year, I was thinking about this yoga and this stacking yoga, and I often put it together and you kind of get this cumulative benefit, and I was thinking that's actually kind of what I'm doing in my business now and kind of what I'm doing in my life now, and it's not something that I have ever really done before. And so I love this idea of like taking good habits and things that work and then doing a little bit more and a little bit more, or building a program and then adding a little bit, like slightly tweaking it, and that when you layer things, you get a lot more out of them, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where I am now. I'm kind of in this moment of big shift, and I'm just letting it happen, which I live by a creek now, and I know Sarah lives in nature too. And
you guys have beautiful bodies of water by both of you.
My creek gets very noisy when it rains, and then it's very calm, and I'm like, it's just kind of like that. Like it's totally out of my control whether it's going to be noisy and full or completely calm and peaceful and like this babbling brook. And so it reminds me of that's kind of how life is right now. And so when we can soften in and just appreciate it in all its forms, that's helpful.
Yeah, that's amazing. You also, was it this year that you became a grandmother, or was that the year before?
Last year that I became a grandmother, but this year the child became a person, if that makes sense. Now he walks and talks and has quite a feisty mindset. My child, who has the grandson, got married this year too. So I really had it's
a really big year.
Really big year. And my middle son actually created, I don't know exactly what you call it, but a startup or a business, like founded a company, which is like, I'm like, what's going on? So again, I think it's really helpful when I have just decided, not that any of it's bad or good, I just have to let go. Like all these things are just going to happen. in healthcare, we're so taught to be on things and manage everything. And what life continues to teach me is that letting it happen and choosing how you respond to it is a much less expensive, energetic process.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I love the, congratulations on the grant that you just got, because that's going to be amazing for all of those healthcare providers to have access to that. It's awesome.
I'm delighted, and so really delighted that people are beginning to pay for it. And I think that would maybe be my message, is keep asking, because it takes time, but things do change eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just so powerful to have access to the coaching and the support during these tough times. In that, when I say tough times in that tone of voice, I'm meaning it just, like in the hospital situation and stuff, it's just like, it just hasn't stopped is the feeling, right? Like it's busy everywhere and everybody's still tired. And so the more things like that where institutions can support and create something that will help that replenishment, because I think many people are missing things that replenish them right now. And maybe that's a really good thing for people listening to think about in 2025. If you're feeling like tired and like you've been running a long marathon for multiple years, that could be a really good goal to think about, is replenishment. Sarah, I'm interested in, what are you thinking about, what are the themes or the shifts that you're seeing for the coming year in clinical practice that people might not be aware of or might not be thinking about?
I think there is always some sort of change, and I think that it can, when you're in that point of frustration, overwhelm, overextended anyway, even teeny tiny changes feel like too much. Like, I remember very well the "stop asking me to do more, you don't understand what I'm doing already" piece. Mm-hmm. So I think that we are seeing some things that may be helpful, like for some of the physicians have added AI scribing, for instance. That is something new on the horizon that some organizations are now saying yes to, or some colleges or some of the medical advice bodies are saying, yes, here's some rules around that, where you could start to apply the understanding of what you're looking out for if you're going to start interacting with something like an AI scribe. But then the integration into practice can still be super difficult for any change. And so it's not for everyone. It's a tool for your toolbox. It doesn't replace you doing your orders or updating the patient cumulative profile. There's still other components of your visits with patients that is not being looked after by the AI system. But I think that's one of the, big ones that are on a lot of people's horizon is, should I or shouldn't I, or am I a failure because I can't get this thing to work for me? I think that's important to acknowledge that it's not for everybody, and there's always changes coming. When we're looking at change, it's that ability to step back and say, where will I be able to consider this suggestion coming down from above? So if your organization is wanting to ask you to do something, or your college, or your, like the Canadian Medical Association, would love to see family physicians using their team more wisely, and we're not sure, are we going to be in charge of choosing the team? Are we going to be given a team? Who's going to pay for this team? How will we integrate this team? I don't want to train a team, right? So there's a lot of us feeling overwhelmed by the suggestion of change, whether that change is we're losing a physician, we're gaining a physician, we're losing a nurse, we're gaining a nurse. You now have to do this, you have to do that, as part of, different rules or regulations, and it can just feel a slap in the face, or I can't, or I'm already overwhelmed and you're asking me to do what? And taking a moment to, one, acknowledge you and have some compassion for how hard you're working and how tired or overwhelmed or where you're at in your state right now. And then the big step back. So that could be while you're showering, after you've had a good nap, while you're out walking, and saying, okay, here's what I'm being asked to do. How could this work in my favor? what would be good about this? How would this be good? Where could this be good? And sometimes it will be a no, that's not for me and that's not good for me. But sometimes it's, oh, well, if I had somebody do this or that, that could be helpful to me. Or if this part was done, maybe that would free up time to do that. And then that asking for what you want is, if I'm asked to do that, in what way would that be of benefit to myself or my patients? And if that's the case, what am I going to need to make it work for me? And then that process of saying, well, can I do that, or do I need someone else to help me do that? And that's that asking for, what do you need? And so I think that's part of the changes I'm seeing. It could be the AI, it could be changes up in team, or that local micro area that you work in. There could be something there that's changing. That it always can feel very abrupt if it's coming at you and doesn't feel like you're the one instigating this change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think recognizing too, no matter what change, and even when it's good change, there is a level of stress and discomfort that comes with it. And especially when we're talking about change within clinical practice, there's a level of inefficiency that comes with it initially, even if ultimately it makes you more efficient. And so, like, having patience with that. I've been playing around with an AI scribe again. I tried one a while back, like a year or more ago, and it just wasn't there where it was helpful. I'm trying another one. It is closer, but just speaking of, like, the frustrations and stuff, I just finished a very busy office, and it was, like, glitched out on me a couple times, which it's lovely if it works, and that's fantastic. But then the times where freezes and doesn't actually record the call or something is really, really frustrating. And even though it's this, what I've noticed, and I think it's a good example of what you're talking about, is even though I have this thing that's creating the notes for me, it's still figuring out the workflow where that actually improves efficiency. Because there's the editing that you have to do with those notes. There's the copy and pasting, but there's also just the interacting with it in between visits, that it seems like it shouldn't be something, but it is. It's a different thing, and it's a change, and it just takes you slightly out of that, like, efficient workflow that when you're doing things exactly how you've always done them. I think long term it'll be fantastic. I'm not sure if I'll keep using it right now. We'll see how it goes, but I think a good thing to talk about, because people are absolutely hearing about it and hearing about colleagues do it. But I agree. I think somebody right now, the way it is, somebody who's not really into computer and digital stuff probably would end up feeling really frustrated right now. Like, I've enough geek within me that I'm able to, like, fiddle and try to figure it out and communicate to them and the things that aren't. But some people that would be too much, and that's fine. I think wait at the sidelines if you're not ready, because it will get better over, like, very quickly.
Yeah, and I think we tend to make it about ourselves if we can't immediately adapt to it, and it's not about you. Your place might not have a good system, or it might not be a good fit for you. And so I remember years ago when we went to the EMR, and it was like, some people get it like that, and it's not necessarily about you. It's about a fit with your practice style and your brain and the way you think, and our tolerance for change. And as you mentioned, I don't know a physician who loves change. And so we immediately associate change with bad, and we are trained to problem spot. And so any change, we're like, but this won't work and this won't work. And so it becomes so tiring, rather than just sort of, I like to say that, they'll figure it out. It just always takes 3 to 5 years longer than I think it should. And that helped me breathe while I waited for them to solve the problem, which doesn't mean you can't make suggestions, but you don't have to sit in the energy of frustration, because we don't have enough energy for that. But I think we do really make it about ourselves, and so recognizing that none of this is about you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so valuable, Jessie. I think I've seen that over and over in the last year, as Canada, or Alberta specifically, took on their electronic medical record in the hospital system, and just watching the gloom and the frustration in all of the staff and everything taking so much longer. And then I'm seeing the same thing happening in both Queensland and New South Wales right now. In Australia are rolling out their completely different, by the way, computer systems. It's like, oh wow, we can see this pattern, we know this pattern, it's not you.
It's a like look around. Everybody's got a sad face on. Everybody's frustrated. It's taking everybody longer to do their work. It is part of change. This is the normal as we roll out new things into the world. So yeah, it's very valuable, Jessie. Yes, it's not you.
And, I think, too, people underestimate how long that change stress lasts as well. Like, I think it's easy to be like, well, I should be over it. I should be fine, etc. But especially big change. Like, I'm thinking to when we bought an office building and renovated it and moved our practice in, which seems like it would be amazing. But it took months before it actually felt good. It was stressful to be there because everything was somewhere else. Like, everything was different. The sounds were different. The layout was different. And it took much longer than what I would have thought it would until I actually felt like, okay, this is the routine and this is how things are.
Well, and that grace and compassion for just the time and adaptation that we don't give ourselves. It's like, I should have figured this out by now. I should like it. I'm supposed to. But it takes, as you said, getting used to. But even just acceptance of the imperfections. Like, we like to fix things and we like them to function optimally. And so in medicine, we get much more upset when we change and we can't find things, or the workflow isn't quite right. And then maybe we're not happy and we're like, well, this was supposed to be great. Now it's terrible. And then we go off into our spiraling of painful stories.
Totally. So many parallels there too with how we handle our personal goals. Right? Like when we perceive there's something within us that we're trying to change or fix, because I think that's how we often think about it. And it's awkward because it's new things that you're trying to do to change that thing. You may not be doing it perfectly. We have low tolerance for the imperfections. We want it to hurry up and be done. Like, all that, what we're talking about happening at a practice level, it happens within us almost on a daily basis. What were you going to say, Jessie?
I was just thinking that meanness. I was actually just working with a client before who started out saying, I failed. I didn't get any of those things that I was supposed to do, And I was like, wait a minute. Like, the only way you're failing is being mad at yourself that you failed, right? Because it makes it harder. And when you're releasing all that cortisol and feeling terrible about yourself, when really it just hasn't happened yet, is what I always like to say. You'll figure it out. It just hasn't happened yet. You haven't found the right path yet.
It's a powerful word. What I was going to say is what I love about these New Year's interviews with you is talking about the word of the year. Because I got this from you. So I'm curious, what are you thinking about this year?
So, I'm happy to share. I have 3 words. That's how I do it now. 3 words and a stretch word. And I really enjoy the process of having more than one word, because I think in our descriptions of our lives are complicated. And so over the course of a year, different things come up. And so I feel like by having 3, I can get into all the sort of facets and have a resource at the ready for whatever comes up. So my 3 this year are belonging. Because I really want to work on that sense of, so many of us show up and we think we don't belong. And in medicine, we were somewhat trained to think we don't belong. And so we're always looking about how we're falling short, or we don't belong, or we don't fit in, or we don't have enough friends. Or even in, leadership, I don't belong at that table, or I don't belong here. And so really letting go of that finally. It comes up in these very subtle ways, and I see it a lot even around holidays, like when people who work in medicine especially are just we're so used to being in a different setting, and then we're in this quiet home space and we just can't quite like navigate the two spaces. And so that's what I'm going to work on, and just deciding I belong everywhere. I kind of really like the idea of I belong everywhere and everybody belongs everywhere. And what if that whole concept of belonging evaporated? So I'm going to practice thinking I belong everywhere, because that thought will come up, like I don't belong in this meeting or in this setting or in this. So I'm going to own that this year. And then my next one I really like, which is beyond. And last year, one of my words was freedom, where I was like trying to let go of things, which I did. somewhat successfully, but I didn't quite finish the project. And so the beyond is sort of like, I've really moved beyond them. And so maybe I had the freedom of letting them go a little bit, but I just want to move beyond, like, I would just say like drama, for example, or being frustrated about things that are out of my control, or stories I have about whatever. I just want to leave them in the dust. That's the beyond. And it also, when I talk about it, I get all excited. So I know it's like the right word. And then the next word is totally not me. And so I'm also really excited.
Curious.
Yeah. It's sparkle. You guys might say it's me, but I don't really like to sparkle, but I have decided that it would be really fun, and like I should just go for it. And like I'm always sort of, I try to be understated and like just a little, I'm known as like the soft, calm one. I'm not going to be the loud sparkle. It was inspired by someone actually at Brave Enough who was wearing this awesome, super comfy dress that was sparkly, but very understated. And I was like, I want to dress like that. Like I would never, ever do that. And I thought it's just like a little twist that I'm hoping will add a little sparkle, and like also just appreciating like the sparkles on the water and the sparkly things in life that we often miss or don't take time to attend to. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun to explore that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think too, as physicians, especially women physicians, I would say we're taught to kind of suppress the sparkle, right? Like in a lot of places, you don't want to be too girly, and or at least this is my experience. I know some women physicians are very feminine and do it well, but I think I always had that feeling of you need to keep that like a little.
I was raised that way. Like you never say anything you're proud of. You never like. So notice I can't like be like too sparkly, but a little sparkle I think is good. So I'm gonna dabble with that. So they're all a little bit stretchy and challenging, but I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I love those. It makes me just want to steal yours.
You can. Steal them all.
And I think we almost always do this interview before I sit down, because I usually do December 31st kind of reflecting and finishing up the previous year, and then January 1st I think about the next year. And so we've usually done this where it gives me things to think about. Mine, I haven't come up with the words because I haven't sat down to do it. But my overall thought of what I want this year is like more me, meaning like to say yes to the things that I've been holding off on, thinking, okay, I can't do that. At some point I wish I could do that, and to start just doing it. And one of those things is I love to cook. Like it's one of my passions, and I've wanted to do like travel with some culinary training, and I've wanted to do like recipe development and things like that. And so I've been playing with it a bit more in the recipe development, but I think this year I'm going to like find like a good solid level culinary type week-long program or something, and go and like start to build those skills, because I would think I would love it. And then also I can pass on what I learn and what I know about cooking healthy to manage weight and stuff. But that's one. And then what are the other sort of, I think like when I say more me, I'm thinking just like spending a bit more time asking, like, is it actually like, do I want like in here, in my, like in the depths of myself, rather than just like reacting. And over the past years, I've spent a lot of time thinking about like which pieces of my life are actually like the way me as this like individual being truly wanted them to be, and which ones are really just that there was a pattern shown and I followed the pattern and did it successfully and thought that that's what I wanted. Because I think there's so many things that we end up doing because we think that's what we need to be doing.
We should. The wants versus the should wants.
Yeah, but it's not always what actually supports us. So those are kind of where I'm contemplating. I want to be able to run really well this year without getting injured. I was doing so well through the summer. I was training for a long trail run and ended up getting injured and couldn't do the race. it would just be nice to have a year where I don't have a running injury and I could just like have that freedom out on the trails and just go and enjoy it. Yeah. Sarah, what are you thinking about for yourself?
Okay. I came to this podcast and Siobhan said, now remember to get your words ready. I'm like, I don't have words, but I do have themes. So I think that I can condense it to words and then we'll have an understanding of the themes. The first one is connecting. So this year we moved back to Australia and my intention for working was to have intentional discomfort. I was going to go locum because I wanted to give back to the communities and peoples that are underserved in regards to medical access to medical care potentially, or be part of the underserved medical areas. But what I have loved doing some of these early locums is the learning about different cultures, minorities, women within difficult relationships, and just growing my heart towards being as helpful on an individual level to start with within these communities, and just being able to grow that love of these amazingly beautiful populations of people has been already awesome. And we've only been here 2 months so far, and that's been 2 locations of work so far, and I've got another few lined up, and I'm just so excited to be increasing the love and connection of these beautiful people, and heartbroken at the same time, because I don't think you can really hear people's stories without hearing the hurt and harm that's happened to them as well. So that's certainly part of this and going forward. And of course, if you're moving into a new location with a new EMR, new staff, new building, new everything, every time you go to work, it's intentional discomfort. And so rather than intentional discomfort being my word, it's more adventure. And adventure because adventure requires intentional discomfort. You're going somewhere that you're not familiar with, you're doing something new, you're feeling either a little brave or a little challenged. And that includes going to new places and doing new things, like physical challenges of, like we recently, I'm living in far north Queensland, and we went on an adventure for my birthday in December. We went to some waterfalls, and it involved walking down and back out of rainforest paths, over tree stumps, through the mud sometimes, looking out for new animals and birds, watching this beautiful water cascading.
And snakes.
There's not so many snakes in the rainforest on the ground. They tend to be more nocturnal, so you're good.
Dude, I was going to say, don't tell me they're in the trees, Sarah. Don't tell me they're...
No, we're not. No, yes, of course, you're always looking out for danger, but at the same time, it's more that adventure spirit. So I have always loved adventuring, and I feel like my whole life is an adventure right now, which makes my heart happy. So I think connection, love, and adventure, I think I can't go wrong this year with those 3.
Oh, those are amazing. And yeah, like I know you're returning to your home country, but still just the act of changing countries.
Oh, it was massive.
Even, physically just moving, but then changing medical work.
Yes.
Huge.
Oh, yes. So last year I could sum up with heartbreak, the heartbreak of leaving a very important and special community behind in order to head back to origin country. That was one of the hardest things I ever did in my whole life and whole career. And then the arriving here and having to re-synapse all of the synapses, all the medication names are different, the rules around prescribing, the rules about billing, the new EMR, the new system. It's been a massive challenge, and one that I signed up for. And so having that, I signed up for this, I can do this, I can give myself time to learn it, I can ask, I can let it be not perfect yet. It's also important as we're making huge changes in our clinical day for whatever reason, whether it's imposed upon us because the hospital's introducing a new computer system. Yeah, So that's been part of last year, and then even coming into the new year, the same will be happening. Yeah, because I still don't feel like I've got my finger on all of the medicine. Fortunately, people are people. That part I feel like I rock, but the whole now what do I do with you part, that's the piece that's still growing and learning. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Any sort of last thoughts before we wrap up, Jessie?
A thought came to mind when Sarah was talking, actually, of this idea of growing and learning. And I'm a pediatrician by training, so we think about like kids are supposed to grow and learn and change all the time. And yet as adults, we somehow are like, nope, I'm formed. And if there's something that I need to work on, there's something wrong with me. And so I love this idea of, we're just constantly growing and evolving and changing. And in fact, we wouldn't want it otherwise, because if things never changed, how boring and awful would that be? And so I think this journey of, coaching and mindfulness, it helps you navigate that. But if we could have an acceptance of the fact that, it's all a journey, and we're going to continue every year, we're going to continue to change. And that seems like this really hopeful way to approach the new year and whatever else is coming in life. Like, we're going to change here, and then that's going to change, so it's okay. And we can just, if we can work on how we show up for the change and be strategic and intentional about that. I always like to show up with love, right? So show up with love for the change and see what happens. And then that strikes me as the way that I want to approach all the things that are ahead, who knows what they're going to be, who knows what's coming next.
Yeah, you never know. While you're talking, it reminded me of, I watched a show about brain health on Masterclass, the Masterclass app. And one of the things they were talking about is one way you keep your brain healthy is by doing difficult things, which is what you guys are both talking about like doing the stuff that actually is uncomfortable and intentionally uncomfortable. And I think I've been thinking this past year a lot about too, our body's capacity to change. And I think as we get a little bit older, it's really easy to think it's a downhill slope from here and everything's going to get worse. And I think I've been really working on believing like I can change, my body will respond to the changes I create. My brain can respond to the changes I create. Maybe it looks different than when I created changes when I was 20. But there's probably also a lot of positives to how it looks different from what I would have done in my 20s. But believing that, it may look different, it may have more discomfort, but maybe that's actually a good thing in life.
I love this bringing the body in, and I'll say that's something I've worked on always in yoga. But when you bring your brain and your body and kind of let them work together to make change, like we need to embody the change within our bodies or it doesn't stick, right? And we can't just change our body and disregard our brain. And so that link, the physiologic link, can really be the missing piece for, I think, a lot of people when whether it's trying to lose weight or get comfortable with change, sort of understanding the physiology of that can be a really useful tool.
Yeah. And yeah, like who says that we should stop changing, right? Like why, how did that become sort of that ideal that you're just done and you don't work on anything?
It's funny. I guess we look more wrinkly, but maybe we all decide that that's worse. But what if we're actually wiser? And what if we're actually what if that's beautiful? It's just our culture has decided one is better than the other. But what if it's not?
That's a really good thought for all of us to think about, to contemplate on. Sarah, any last thoughts from you?
I think that what I was talking about earlier, the change and the having difficulty asking for what you need. One of the things that can be helpful, part of the words of today, connecting, belonging, is telling your story out loud. Telling the story of, here's my day and here's what's not going well, here's what I've been asked to do and I don't know where that will fit in my day, can help somebody else see things you're not seeing. Or even, how we bounce difficult problems off other people. We're like, hey, I saw this person today and blah, 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 blah. Oh, I got it. I know what's going on. You have that moment of, I don't know what's going on here. You start telling the story to one of your colleagues and you're like, oh, I think I got it. Or you're like, I still don't know what's going on. And they're like, what did you think about this? And you're like, oh, yeah. that could totally work. That could certainly show me the next step I could take in terms of figuring out what this could be. Or, ooh, that's really weird and crazy. I have no idea what I would do with that either, that validation. So I think the what do you need to be successful within your day, successful within your week, successful within your life? Talk to others. Have that connection. Have the ability to acknowledge that none of us are 100% in our day. We could all use some help. We could all use something, those hacks and tricks that we love to share, those 20-minute meal ideas, the how do you make your week go well when you've got little children, or when you've got 2 jobs, or you've got a full-time job that you're not certain about when you'll be home. Talk out loud. Yes, you can do that with a coach, but you can just do it with a colleague and a friend. That perspective gaining and even some suggestions can be so helpful to you when you're just in that puddle of, I don't know what to ask for, I don't know what I need, I just know I'm not doing well. So I think that connection, belonging, you belong, you're not supposed to have figured it all out. You can grow and learn, but share. Don't hide it inside, share it, because that can be so helpful to you.
And I think helpful to the other people too, right? Like medicine is an area where people function in silos, assuming that person across the hall from you that seems to have all their notes done somehow has it sorted out. But, they probably also have ways that they're struggling that you don't see, that isn't talked about. And I think if we can speak more about the things, we help ourselves, but also help the people listening who might say, oh, it's not just me, and release some shame and frustrations on their end. I think there's a lot in medicine where we can, being more vulnerable and making it safe for us to be more vulnerable, has a lot of power and benefit.
I like to say vulnerable is valuable, even though we're taught the opposite. And I think all of us actually do group work, and I think that's really the power of group work. And I see many people are really hesitant to jump in, like, what will people think of me and my problem? Speaking of belonging, I won't belong. My issue is different. They won't understand me, or I'll be discovered. And what I find is the opposite. People are like, I can't believe everyone else thinks this way too and has similar problems, and this is all normal. And so I think that's really the power of signing up for a group, whether it's about weight loss or parenting or wellness or charting, it doesn't matter. The power of being in a group with other women in medicine and men in medicine. Interestingly, the men kind of get excluded, but they actually have the same problems too. It's whatever setting feels safe to you, I think is really, really powerful. And I have found doing retreats that doing it in person is even more magical, right? Because you get that, it's a different level of connection. We came to this Zoom stuff mostly during COVID, and also because it's convenient. But I think sometimes we then rely on that and we miss out on the other. And it is definitely more convenient. I think there's a place for both. If you have small children, you have to be on Zoom, right? Like that's just, or, reasons why you can't travel. But I think, or Sarah's in Australia, so it would be awfully hard for us to gather. But I think there is a lot of value in that human connection and sharing.
Totally. And there's value in investing in it. I'm thinking about, there was a Facebook post in the Canadian physician group where a new to practice physician was like struggling with getting notes done and finding that their whole evening was being taken up, all the stuff that we've all dealt with, right? And was wondering, she was actually asking about your program, Sarah, and so I hopped in to say totally worth it. And in her note, she had worried about spending the money as somebody early in practice, and I was able to say with like my absolute whole heart that any money that you invest in coaching is so incredibly worth it. Like it's one of the best things that you can invest in, because you're investing in yourself. And when you've invested in yourself, the things you can do and create in your life are amazing. And like investing in figuring out how to get your notes done so you're not spending your evenings doing it. Like, how many evenings do you need freed up to make that worthwhile? Not a lot. Pretty soon you're like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing I ever spent money on. But I think we're fearful because we think we should have been fixed. We should be great right out of the gate. And yet nobody actually teaches a lot of this.
Yeah, they don't teach us these things. And imagine this thought of like, who would you be without whatever, the drama about your mother-in-law or the drama about your weight or the constantly feeling inadequate as a mom, like that is priceless. And I actually think it, in the end, saves you a lot of money because we spend a lot of money trying to feel better about things. And I will, full disclosure, before I had coaching and was a pediatrician, I have a set of teaks that almost every color, they come in thousands of colors. I have like 7 pairs because that made me feel better. I would shop. And once I had coaching, that's what a pediatrician could splurge on, were the teaks flats. I don't have any fancy purses, but I don't buy a lot of stuff. I don't need it because I feel much more comfortable in my own skin, and I'm not sort of self-medicating with something that temporarily feels good. And so I think many of us don't realize we medicate with fancy trips and gifts and sometimes food, but lots of things. And so I have found actually that it makes your life a lot less expensive. And so if you can't decide you're worth investing for the other, I'm always like, it actually pays for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's true on so many different levels. Like there's so many ways that it actually feeds back and pays back. But I think, I actually went through a period of time where I didn't have a personal coach, mainly because the one I'd been working with kind of stepped out of coaching, and then I was too busy, too lazy, whatever. Thought it was too much, too hard to find somebody new. And so it took me a while to find somebody new. And I think that's a really big piece of why I had a year where I really struggled, because it's hard to take care of your own brain when you're in life and dealing with it. It's so much easier when you can dump all the brain goo on the table in front of somebody else, and they can help you tidy it up and make it feel better. So I think, that's something for all of you listening. If you've been curious about the coaching stuff and you've been thinking, maybe this is the year where you decide to invest in it. And I honestly can say whoever's program, there's so many excellent physician coaches around, whoever's program sounds like it resonates will change your life. Like it really, really does.
And I think what you mentioned there is it's a fit thing. I mean, so you want to find someone that you feel comfortable with and their style. And I think just listening to us, we all have very different styles, right? And so you can figure out what feels right to you and find that place and try it. I like to think too, we were trained to kind of be skeptical of things in medicine and always look for this and look for that. And so that's part of why we're skeptical about coaching. And we're also taught not to invest in ourselves. We should know it. We shouldn't need help. We shouldn't need support. And those two things keep us from the thing that would actually help us enjoy medicine and enjoy these lives that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. It's been a pleasure to see you in real life, in quotation marks.
Totally. It's been great to connect.
Oh, tell people, sorry, before we stop, tell people where to find you. We haven't done that. Sarah.
Oh.
So the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast is my podcast, and chartingcoach.ca is the place that you'll find the Charting Champions paper.
And you can find me at pauseandpresence.com and or jessiemahoney.md.com, and it's Jessie with an IE. And the podcast you can find on all the podcast places, and it's called the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Excellent. Thank you again, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. It was fun.
Hey, if you found this podcast episode helpful, I would encourage you to like and subscribe. Every time you do, you help a colleague or friend find our podcast, and it can help them too. Don't forget to share it along with your friends. If you're looking for extra help, don't forget we have Charting Champions for physicians and Smarter Charting for nurse practitioners and other clinicians to help you get home with your work done. We are helping you create sustainable clinical medicine. Thanks for listening.